Aloha, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our networking session to Artists, Activism, Advocacy, and Global Health Security. You're all joining our room. I can see the numbers ticking up really quickly here, so I'll just give it a few seconds and briefly introduce myself. My name is Kealoha Fox. I'm the Native Hawaiian Liaison at AlohaCare, where we provide free health services. And I am part of the Obama Foundation and the Asia Pacific program. We're here as part of the closing of the Women in Global Health Security Summit. We're asking ourselves, asking you, asking one another, and asking our decision makers, how do we express ourselves through art and activism and advocacy through various mediums of creativity? We hope you'll share your thoughts with us in the chat and online. Feel free to use the Q&A feature. You can hashtag WGH Security Summit and hashtag COVID5050. If you're tweeting or Instagramming, please feel free to tag Women in Global Health, the Wagner Foundation, and Foreign Policy Magazine. We have an amazing group of creators here on this panel and in the audience. We hope that you'll even share your own forms of expression, if that's music, if that's poetry, if that's film. Please, let's use the chat box thoroughly, and let's spread really great messages of positivity, of thoughtful creation, and a better bridge to an artistic and creative future ahead. I wanted to just start with my own sharing of what does this mean for us here as Native Hawaiians in Hawaii, as Indigenous people in our island of the Pacific. Due to the sharp increase of COVID-19 affecting the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities here, our leaders and elders of hula, our traditional form of movement and dance, have created a community grounding commitment of a 30-day kapu, a restriction to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. Though we are physically separated, our social and cultural fabric has not diminished at all. And so the garland here of these plants, they represent these cultural expressions bestowed to me by our traditional practitioners of dance to protect me from harm and sickness. And I hope that you will share how your community and your leaders are doing the same. I'll start with a brief opening of introductions. We have Lisa Russell here, Emmy award-winning filmmaker and advocate, screenwriter, and curator who has many, many years of experience producing films and creative events that lie at the intersection of arts, social justice, and global development. She's going to be sharing some of her medium with us, and we'll be closing out our session with a beautiful, brand new debut that I know you'll all love, and it will take you into your day and into your night and throughout the week. We also have Ayanda MaKayi, actor, advocate, and gender equality leader in South Africa. We just love all of his work in live performance and expression, especially the work that you're doing in Johannesburg. Ayanda has been provided opportunities to present at just amazing, huge global forums, including Global Citizen. And so we're just really lucky to have him here with us today. We also have Helena Vizcaino. She's a creative in social innovation. Her expertise is at the intersection of visual communications, creative strategy, and design. For the last 3 years, Helena has been applying her skills in the world of global health and development, and she too will be sharing some of her projects and programs with us. And finally, we have Lilly Khorsand, illustrator and visual creative, and also part of Women in Global Health. She's a global health practitioner, creative illustrator, and longtime advocate. Lilly recently illustrated a children's book on COVID-19, and she's making infographics and zines with other advocacy groups to help explain and share in different forms of expression. So again, thank you everyone for joining us and engaging in this event. Let's think about how the 5 asks on the website and that have been shared throughout the Security Summit also link to the way that artists, advocates, and activists are expressing and leading the way. So Lisa, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. So big question, how are you conveying messages about gender equality and women in leadership through your work? How's that been received? And, really, how do we support more work of leaders like you from other artists in global health? We really want to know from your lifetime and career of experience, share your thoughts and insights with us.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy any opportunity I can work around women in global health, because for me, I've been in the global health community for such a long time. I do work as a filmmaker, but I didn't go to film school. I started off my career getting my master's in public health and working as a humanitarian aid worker in Kosovo and Albania back in the 90s, the late 90s. And it was there, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but basically I got introduced to sort of basically some unethical practices of journalists who were motivated and committed to telling this one story about women in Kosovo, which was the story about rape being used as a tool of war. And the women in Kosovo were really unhappy because they felt that at the end of the war, they were basically just going to be remembered as Kosovo women who've been raped. Because at the time, there was not really a lot of other stories that were being told about them, except for this sort of one-dimensional look at sort of, suffering and it's exploitative storytelling, but it's sort of this idea that these women were only women who were victims of rape and nothing else. And so that put the idea of becoming a filmmaker in my head, and I committed to really learning all aspects of the craft. So I work as a director, I produce, I shoot, and I edit my own films, and I've primarily been working in the global health and UN NGO sector for my career. What I think is interesting, looking back on it now, because I've been working in this space for so long, is that when I started my career, I really was straddling two male-dominated industries. One was global health, and I was even thinking today, like when I was trying to remember who the global health leaders were at the time that I was getting my master's degree, it was Jonathan Mann, who we unfortunately lost in an airplane crash. There was Peter Piot, there's Paul Farmer, but I cannot really easily pull out the name of any particular global health leader who was a woman. Like I had a biostatistics professor who was a woman, but other than that, the global health industry was really run by men. And then on the other side of that, I also worked in filmmaking and filmmaking and media and arts, and that was driven primarily by men. So I've worked in this, I've straddled these two worlds for so long. And, I've also been sort of like, I was a lone voice in terms of bringing artists into sort of the UN NGO space for so long. I worked with young poets, and I shouldn't say all arts. I was working a lot with like conscious artists who were poets, musicians, steppers, beatboxers, not people who had a job in design or graphics or anything like that. They were working in the gig economy and lived and survived as, freelance artists and whatnot. And so I've spent my career really figuring out how to mesh these two very different worlds. And I like to say I'm multilingual because I speak UN talk very well, and I also speak artist talk very well, and they are two totally different languages, and they're very different cultures. And so I've learned how to sort of straddle these two things, and I like to say shapeshift because I jump back and forth between the two. But now we're at a point which is pretty exciting because I think the global health community is embracing artists and creatives in a way that I had never seen it done before. And that's really exciting. A lot of people are like, oh my God, you're doing all this great work, you're killing it. And I'm like, I've actually been doing the exact same thing for 15 years, the exact same thing for 15 years. It's the world has caught up. And so with it, with all this excitement and with all this kind of popularity though, now I'm looking at it and saying, okay, now I'm at a different phase in my career, because while this is really exciting, there's also a lack of representation of artists, at least working class artists, in any of the global health leadership at any point of the United Nations. And next year is a historic year. The UN has declared it the International Year for Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. And I learned by speaking at this pretty high profile conference in Indonesia a couple years ago that when you switch again, it's language, right? When you stop using the word artist or art, which has for so long been sort of more like fluffy and kind of like, we're going to save the world kind of thing. And then you start talking about it in terms of creative economy, where you can actually put numbers and data and statistics, and the fact that it's one of the fastest growing economies in the world, that changes how serious people take you and the things that you have to say as a creative professional. So I wanted to, I know I only have, 10 minutes, and I hope I can talk all day on this. This is like, I love talking about this stuff. So please give me some sort of, you have 2 minutes or something. But yeah, so I wanted to, I guess, relay some messages to the global health community, because a lot of the things that I heard being talked about in the sessions that I tuned into previously were sort of, for example, the digital divide or lack of connectivity for people in terms of, we want people to, rise up in the global health leadership, but how can that happen when you don't have access to basic internet or laptops? I'm in Kenya right now. I've been in East Africa since last November, and I can tell you that artists, because we are creative thinkers, we're not just creating art and entertainers and performers. If you have to survive in the gig economy as an artist, I think you are one of the world's greatest thinkers and problem solvers. So I have friends who they could reach anybody through their music videos, through their poetry. They get tens of thousands, millions of views just on their cell phones or WhatsApp conversations. And if we took some of the work culture of the way artists work and exist in the world, I think we could actually reach, a wider population. So I think I'm going to not go too much farther, because again, I could just talk and talk. I made all these notes, but I wanted to quickly show a 2-minute video that I produced or I edited for the IFC World Bank Group for their Sustainability Exchange Conference. So I'm going to share my screen and share that real quick, and then I'd love to just say a couple words after that before we move on. So give me a second. Yes. Let's see. Okay. Can you see? Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yep, we can see it great. Thank you.
Great, sure. Okay, so it's just a few minutes long, so I'll play it now.
It is said that the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. With a stroke of a brush, a new landscape is seen. A sculpture can reimagine our environment. A photograph can be a tool for justice. Songs can help communities build resilience. And films can challenge harmful narratives to build empathy. It's true that artists can move hearts and minds, but we can do so much more. We are one of the world's fastest growing economies. We are incredible creative thinkers and problem solvers. We build new planning paradigms for cities and drive tourism as cultural workers. We are important communicators during crises and help connect the disconnected. Our livelihoods are independent of a formal work culture. We can be of any age, any ethnicity, and work anywhere in the world. We are not charity, but a growing, thriving economy. Our sector generates more than 29.5 million jobs and $2,250 billion in U.S. revenue. Our world is in need of a creative revolution, and yet our livelihoods are at stake. You can help change this trajectory. Create artist-friendly policies. Support the health and well-being of working-class creatives. Give artists a seat at the decision-making tables. Solicit our creative thinking and problem-solving skills, and engage us in developing a sustainable world by 2030. My name is Lisa Russell, and I'm a filmmaker. As founder of Create 2030, I advocate for professional artists in the sustainability sector. Let us create a better world together.
Okay. So just to wrap up, again, this is going to be an exciting year, I think, for creatives and for artists who work in the sustainability space. I just also wanted to end by touching on something that I've observed with what has happened with the COVID-19 crisis, and that is that artists were hit very badly financially during this crisis, and yet artists were some of the first people to show up. So we were the ones who were singing, there's DJs who are doing house parties, there's all sorts of creative stuff. And what has happened in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic is that oddly, even though people know that artists have been suffering, there's been a plethora of contests, calls for art, creative briefs that have asked artists to work for free. And again, I will just end by saying that next year, my organization and a lot of the artists I work with are going to be advocating to have real leadership, real representation in leadership positions, because there is no other sector that's being asked really to donate their time in the way that we have been asked to donate both before COVID and during COVID. And that's leading to a lot of tokenism where artists are only seen as sort of entertainers, a lot of exploitation because we're being asked again to work for free without any sort of pathway to get paid work, and a lot of power imbalances where when you use the word artist, people automatically think celebrities or only privileged artists that maybe have full-time jobs or are financially able to participate are going to get the recognition in the global health space. So that's, I'll leave that for now. Like I said, I just love talking about this stuff. So thank you for giving me space to speak, and I look forward to any questions we have.
Thank you so much for your passion and sharing Create 2030 with us. Please do share the link to that video in the chat box so that folks can watch it again and share it with their colleagues. And at this time, I'm going to transition to Ayanda. With your work, can you tell us how you think it's important for men to be a part of this creative industry and for men to talk about gender equality? How do you think you can help support these responsible forms of engagement of artists like yourself? We want to see more Ayandas.
Thank you, first and foremost, for having me on this panel. I'm really honored to be part of a conversation that impacts society. And the thing is, one of the social media kits that we got for this conference said that, gender equality is not just a woman's issue. It's everybody's problem. It's everybody's business. And so I'm honored to be part of this conversation. And my goal and my dream is that more men become part of these panels. More men, but beyond that, more men also become part of the audience and the attendees of these conversations. I think we're speaking in circles when women are talking to other women about gender equality. I think we need to start getting more men into the room and start initiating these conversations. I think the power we have through art, I believe that, as a creative industry, we are here to serve a purpose. We've got a purpose, and the vehicle we use is our art, which I think art does not discriminate about any race you come from. It does not, if you saw in that video, you could do it anywhere in the world, any ethnicity, and any class really, any age. And so we've got a vehicle here that reaches every corner of life, and I think with that being said, we then as men have an opportunity through our creative industry to initiate a conversation that needs to be had and reach those deep corners and deep pockets of our industry and our global spectrum at large. I just want to share my screen. I'm going to show you guys a video of a show that I was part of, which kind of gave me the flame to realize my purpose, as a man in this world towards gender equality. This is a show called MTV Sugar. MTV Sugar is a 360-degree campaign which tackles sexual health. It tackles sexual behavior amongst the youth. It tackles toxic masculinity, gender-based violence, and any other forms of discrepancies. So if I can just quickly share this with you.
We're just so happy you're back. I'm getting tons. No. Please. No. You better get your hands off of her.
I did my time.
6 months. When you raped her. He raped Umganwan.
You're the one of Kolotso, MaKayi.
Escorts on my leg. Of course. He's my brother.
Hey, you need to stop acting like a slut.
You like acting important, but actually everyone hates you. My dad, he beats my mom. You have no idea what kind of pressure he's under. I've made my choices in life. I can't change things now. So, usasane chance empilweni.
You never took any responsibility. You killed her and you raped her. You did. You did her. What's wrong with you?
Sorry. Cool. So yeah, that's MTV Sugar, and the character that we're dealing with there is called Saul. Saul is a young gentleman who gets obsessed with this girl, and eventually he starts pretty much buying her stuff and claiming ownership over her based on selling or buying her materialistic stuff and giving her this lifestyle. And eventually he becomes obsessed, and so ends up being abusive and going into domestic violence and gender-based violence, and ends up actually raping her, and eventually she dies or she commits suicide. But the key message here, once we started unpacking the character, we started understanding that Saul actually has a deeper, there's a root of where this problem comes from. And I think that's what we need to start having as men, that conversation as to, it's easy to condemn you and put you into prison as a perpetrator. But in order for us to start rehabilitation, we need to unpack where does the root cause come from and create safe spaces for men to start initiating and talking about these root causes so that it doesn't get to the point of where we are right now. And I think right now we're at a space where, I think gender-based violence, toxic masculinity is at a peak across the world. It's a global pandemic, and it needs men to start taking ownership of their problems. But in that sense, we as men, need to make sure and ensure we create a safe space to initiate this conversation with our brothers. If you look at the impact that MTV Sugar has and that character of Saul specifically, I reflect on the social media comments that I receive on a daily, where people say, oh my goodness, I hate Saul, but I feel like I want to give him a hug, or you get people that say, what a deep episode, South African men really need to heal and stop this cycle of abuse. So the impact is there. The conversations are being initiated. And the spaces that a show like MTV Sugar lives on is in a highly creative space across the board. It's on YouTube. It's a it's a comic book. It's on radio. It's on television. And through visits through schools. Now, the youth are understanding their stories being reflected by people who speak their language. Because the youth in this day and age speak through music, they speak through fashion, they speak through graphic design. And so it's a language they understand, right? if you look at the impact of MTV sugar, studies that were done by the World Bank DIME, just in Nigeria, chlamydia and other STIs dropped by 58%. After watching MTV Sugar, young women doubled after 6 months in terms of HIV testing. The concurrent relationships and partners that young men started having halved. So the impact is there. And the vehicle seems to be art. But now, how do we then support responsible reactions from artists, by getting, like Lisa said, by getting creatives or creative industry sitting at the table. Because the truth of the matter is that artists do want to serve their purpose and speak their language, and they know the potential they have. However, a person would rather not, because at the end of the day, he's got children to feed, he's got a home to feed. And so he would rather do whatever gets that economy in. And once he's safe in terms of that, only then will he start looking at the social impact he can then do. But if that time was not wasted in trying to build a formidable bank account to be comfortable before you tackle your purpose, then change would come at a quicker rate. So yeah, with that being said, I mean, I could also go on. Lisa and I have these conversations for hours. I could also generally go on. I just think it's time that we get a sit at the table with the policymakers, with the government officials, with the world leaders, and start initiating conversations amongst men as well. And yeah, with that being said, I do want to say, men, it's time for us to talk. Let's reshape the statement of men don't cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. I think it's high time to start having that conversation.
Ayanda, thank you so much. That clip that you had shared is really powerful, and the connections between what Lisa was sharing about creative economies and also measurable forms of expression that are actually changing health indicators is really phenomenal at the intersection of your folks' work. There's a lot of chat I'm seeing for both of you, so please feel free to engage. I see people adding their phone numbers, and they're adding their Twitter handles, and they're adding their emails for you. So please, I'm going to transition to Helena now, but please do engage with our chat, and I encourage our audience to engage with our panelists as well in that feature. Helena, can you tell us how you have used your skills as an artist to capture the voices of women and girls in the region where you've worked? Please share some of your projects and your programs with us.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, surrounded by amazing people and hearing so inspiring work and projects and ideas. I'm amazed. I have a little presentation to show. I will share my screen if that's okay. And I will introduce myself a little bit through that. Yay. So, yes, as I was saying, my name is Helena Vizcaino. I am a creative working in the space of social impact and innovation. To work as a visual artist and visual designer in many projects in different countries and places. I have been working in Nigeria, I have worked in Papua, in the US, etc. And in my work, I collaborate with design teams, with communication experts, global health professionals. And I do that to create tools, frameworks, stories, and graphics that illustrate issues around health, gender, and equality. Today, I wanted to show you an example of my work. This is a project that I led in 2018 for Scope Impact, and it was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Global Good. So a little bit of background of the project. The funders were hosting a session on the future of primary health care to inform new investments and future strategies. in order to highlight those gaps and the context in which healthcare is delivered, images as data collected and documented health centers, patients' experience, and environments in 4 countries. The 4 countries were India, Indonesia, Uganda, and Kenya. Through the project, we collaborated with a team of local photographers and facilitators. We visited 62 approximately health facilities and 27 family homes in 4 different locations in each country. And as a result, these are some of the results and outcomes. We came up with more than 2,200 images as data. And we came up with that approach of using images as data, because an image can tell you much more than just reading in a paper a number like 100 deliveries per day. But what does that mean, and how can we actually like tell a better story through images? So that was our approach, and then some of those images were exhibited in Seattle during the session. And the rest of the images, they were built into a platform. This is how the platform looked like, and it showcased all these images from all these different artists and photographers. The platform allows you to filter images by location, by setting. We had rural, peri-urban, and urban settings, and by type of facility. And in the middle piece that you can see on the screen, it was a patient journey that we created that actually helped you put yourself in the place of the patient and kind of follow the journey that people take to go from home towards triage and admission and care and ultimately going back home. As every project, I guess, that everybody has participated in, we encountered and we faced many challenges, sometimes it's like time constraints, sometimes it's like actually getting people to buy in, getting local gatekeepers to buy in your idea. But I think one of the most interesting, challenges we faced is this one, like how can we ensure that these solutions, this platform that we create is not just something for a one-time use. It's something that we can contribute, we can collaborate, we can make it bigger and better together, and how can we keep the users utilizing that platform, that solution that we created. So I have come up with some ideas, and I would love to hear your opinion, and maybe we can develop some more and think about some new opportunities. So, for example, could the images as data approach help teams, organizations, and founders to invest better, think better of the solutions and the interventions that they put up there? Maybe through the photos, through the images, that could inform better ideas. Then, second, could we use this approach to locally document local communities, for example, during COVID, now social distancing, quarantining, like how does that look like? And we could use the available technology, just like mobile phones. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. Everybody can do it. And then could we use these materials that we create, all these pictures, for actually creating like more relatable visual narratives, better communications to speak about issues that we all care about. And then lastly, how can we create a better, more sustainable and collaborative data collection tool that doesn't require from, I was just thinking when Lisa was speaking that I have been traveling so much, and we've all been like moving around, and so it feels so wrong now that we are in this new situation, in this new COVID world, and it feels like it's something that we could just perfectly do online. I just feel that all these skills are so easy and so useful, and it could help so much to come up with like new, better solutions. So if you have any more ideas or any more opportunities, I'd love to hear. And thank you very much. And these are my social media handles in case that you want to reach out. I'm always happy to speak about that.
Thank you. I'm really, we have just a minute or two left for your segment, and I'm just really driven by what you were sharing on impact storytelling. And when we're talking about changing the narrative, I think the projects that you had just showcased here are really able to do that. Is there anything else you wanted to recommend to organizations that are maybe looking at of creative forms of evaluation and research and reporting?
I mean, what I would like to kind of put out there is the idea of like, we come up with so many different tools, so many ideas, so many solutions that are used only one time. So what can we do to actually, those that work, can we just try to scale and adapt to other settings? Can we try to like make it a global tool that everybody can contribute to? So it's not just like owned by one person or by one company or by one organization, but it's something that it can actually help people. And it can be all our tool and all our project. And it can be something that it doesn't stay forgotten in time, but it's relevant during COVID world, it's relevant now and later. So, yeah.
Thank you. I love the idea of crowdsourcing at a global scale, these solutions. I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Helena. I'm going to transition to Lilly, and Lilly, we're going to have a conversation. And, so can you start by telling us how a creative can use your skills to reimagine messaging around COVID-19 and the wider global health issues that you're exploring through your work?
Sure. First, I want to say I'm really excited to just be amongst other artists and talk about this stuff because, like Lisa was saying, sometimes artists are not really taken as seriously, so we're just left out of conversations. And also, thank you for everybody coming to this panel. I think ultimately my message at the end of the day is everything everybody else was saying, and it all goes back to storytelling. So two of the larger projects that I've done this year are when COVID-19 hit, a friend and I kind of were inspired, and she knew that I'm an illustrator. So we wrote this children's book for COVID-19. It's super simple, like 20-some pages with really big pictures, and just like, it looks really funny. Like, it just makes you not afraid of something that's so scary. And she's Nigerian, I'm Iranian Canadian, and we kind of just like inputted stuff that we have from our backgrounds, and eventually this book is now being translated into Farsi, and I had to make changes to make it like culturally appropriate and stuff like that. The second project that I've done is Women of Excellence with Women in Global Health, and we've interviewed a bunch of women, and we did artwork for their pictures, and just like we're telling their stories. I think for me personally, I look at other artists around the world, and all I see is the fact that they are always telling a story. They're always telling either their own story, they're telling somebody else's story, but they're always telling a really important story. And I think throughout time, like, you look at literally every field, even in terms of like the classical art fields, like classical music, classical art, painting, stuff like that, and you notice that the stories of people have consistently been told through this like lens that's been normalized. Like, it's mostly men speaking, it's people who are gender, like their gender is normal, and we've always left out people who are LGBTQ, people who are just different, who might not really fit into the norm. We've kind of just been like, man, you're too weird, like, we're gonna kind of prop this guy up and we're just going to talk about him. But when you look like a little bit deeper, you see that most of the activism, most of the information sharing that is the most effective comes from those artists that are just like in the nitty gritty, they're grassroots, they're just really in the community. The people that know the community the best, they're the people that are able to make information compelling, and they share those stories the best out of everybody else. And for us with the two projects that we did, it's essentially comes down to that as well. I mean, one of our projects with the Women of Excellence, it's focused on women who are all of African descent. I personally am not, my friend was, but it's just the whole project was centered around, I just want to tell people who you are. I want to give people your message. You know, it doesn't matter if I do the work. The point is, I am putting myself in a situation where I'm connecting with people who are actually knowing the information. So that's one part of it for me. And I think as creatives, we generally, because maybe we're not so involved in like the academic part of it, or, you know, some other more like serious parts of the work, and we just think creatively, we end up thinking outside of the box. So we find ways of explaining things that are just fun. You know, they're more interesting, they're fun, they just tug on your heartstrings. I'm also a musician, and I know that for a lot of musicians, your goal is to convey an emotion all the time. And I think artists just do that, you know, even if the information is dry, we find a way to just make it really interesting. So like, that's one of my messages in terms of the reason artists are important and the skills that artists use is because generally speaking, we're on the front lines. You know, we're either talking about our community specifically, or we just know how to, you know, package a message so other people are like, oh, maybe I do want to listen. And I think this message is really important now because like we're looking at COVID-19 and the amount of just fake information, the amount of disinformation, the amount of just so much like political stuff around what's happening. You know, art kind of soothes that a little bit because you can just convey something in a video or in a picture or in a song, and it just calms people down enough for them to kind of listen to you for 1 second. So I think that's really important. And the other part of it is we should, with all the stuff that we do in global health, and this goes back to like COVID-19 especially because it's happening right now, is that we have to remember 3 things. I always remind myself of 3 things. Number 1, artists don't necessarily have to be artists all the time. A lot of us are multi-sectoral already. Like we jump between global health, art, you know, just all these, like, I just look at TikTok right now, and I know TikTok is not like the best platform, but I see all of these doctors who are also creatives, and they're making these really creative, funny dance videos to teach information to people. And I think that's like the first thing to remember. Other than that, it's the fact that what disappoints me the most about most global health or even other projects that I see is that when you are designing something to eventually disseminate either globally or even to a specific population, why do you bring the artist in at the last step? Like, why are they not more important that you bring them in the beginning and you tell them, hey, you know, this is the problem. This is the problem that I'm having that I want to research or I want to address. And this is the group of people that I'm working with. Do you know anyone in this community that's an artist, first of all? Or is there any way for us to change the structure of how we're doing this project so that at the end of it, whatever we do get out of it is actually applicable to the community? I think that's really important. And I feel like back to what Lisa was saying and what Ayanda was saying, like, you know, bringing artists to the table, that's kind of the point of it. It's not just, you know, bringing an artist at the end of the day and like a very famous artist or like an artist that necessarily like has made it or whatever, but actually going into communities, finding local artists and getting them involved in actually designing stuff, because more often than not, like I said, like they know the story better than anybody else. And probably when they're not working with you, they're probably just like creating art on their own. So they might actually have a lot of ideas to share with you already.
Lilly, thank you so much. Coming from a people that, so our history is transmitted orally. That's how our legacies have passed from one generation to the next. And so you've struck so many chords with me personally and with my work. There's a group question, and I would love to start it off with you, Lilly, because you wrote this children's book of what are some good reading resources in areas of research and innovation for understanding the role of art and creativity in science, health, and education. Lilly, I would love for you to just have a minute here, like please plug your book, put it into the chat for us. I love that you've oriented this to children. I don't think we're talking enough about the range of generations that are being affected by COVID-19 and how storytelling across generations, whether we're talking about the really young or the elderly, how we can explain so much more in that way. And so that question is for the whole group around reading resources. Thank you.
I mean, I personally have looked for a while to find a book that intersects art and global health. I have not yet come across a good one. If anybody wants to read our book, it's called Grandma Magic and the Pesky Coronavirus. I think it looks very funny because I drew it, and it's just all the pictures to me are hilarious. But I think what you're saying about like the generational differences that we see in like COVID affecting people, and the fact that like it hit a chord with you, I think that's really wonderful because that's so important. That's kind of the point of art. Like we want to be able to reach different people. But to me, it's, you know, Ayanda was saying like, you know, youth should get involved, and I think to me, it's not just necessarily about age, but I think that's super important. But then you look at like, you know, people who are out of the gender norm, people who are LGBTQ, people who are just, you know, just women that are just living their life, but they're not being paid attention to, domestic violence survivors. Like really, there's just so many different groups of people. And to me, like, I always think to myself, I cannot possibly know what everybody's thinking. I just can't. It's not possible for every one person. And that's kind of the point of like, you go to an artist and you tell them, hey, do you know these people? You know, do you know what they like? You know, just the fact that like you are from Hawaii and you know that your culture is based off of stories and dance. Any person can't just jump in there and just do their thing, because it's going to be so obvious that they don't know what they're doing, and it's just really not, the message won't come across as well. I'll end with an example of like my culture. I come from a culture that is full of music and poetry, and it's kind of funny because it's like a running joke amongst a lot of the younger crowd who didn't grow up in Iran that we don't know a lot of like the sayings and the poems that the older crowd knows. But that directly goes to like both culture and age. If you want to connect with the older crowd and have them listen to you, you're going to have to come up with some of the poems that they know. And that's like the surefire way that you're going to make them think, and they're going to be like, oh, maybe I will listen. So it's my example. And I already accept that I'm not very good at that. I don't know a lot of the poems. So I actively try to get involved with groups that I know can do that work so that I can help them with my skills as an artist to kind of make that come to life, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. We have Olelo no Eo, we have traditional proverbial sayings, and anytime you're doing work with seniors or aging, if you do not recite Olelo no Eo, you're immediately not going to get past any of the gatekeepers. And I think that speaks to the last question I have for the whole group. Anyone can chime in. You know, all of you folks, you're straddling multiple worlds. Like Lisa said, we want to also have creatives build a career that is able to expand these cross-sectoral approaches and these worlds that everyone is walking in. Any closing thoughts that you folks want to share with everyone of how do you do this? How are you staying balanced? And how do you operate so well at such a high level in simultaneous roles and positionalities? Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just want to touch on sort of the elephant in the room because, you know, we hear this all the time and people are constantly saying it, but we need to pay artists. And why we need to pay artists is because we work so very differently. We work in the gig economy, which means every second that I am not working means that I am volunteering my time to do something else. And so for me, I do think there are solutions in the global health community. We don't always have big budgets to pay artists. We don't have whatever, but there are solutions if we care to take the time to listen to creatives. And again, this goes back to the same issue of we need representation of artists who look like us, talk like us, work like us, to actually give solutions to some of these problems. I actually think you could create a career path for artists and curators, also I should say that, in the global health space, but it's going to look very different than your 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job, because I've been asked that. They're like, would you ever take a full-time job in an NGO or an organization? I was like, well, that's interesting because most of my work happens at night. I have to go to shows, I'm at poetry venues, I'm with my DJs, my friends, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm at festivals on the weekends. Like I work a lot and I get up and I do my things, but it requires me to be out in the community a lot. So if the global health community really wants to take this seriously, there's like a few things I would suggest. One is encourage or solicit artists to be on your boards, to be in your leadership positions, to actually let them run the creative initiatives. Policy and program people are fantastic at what they do. We are very good at what we do. We should partner instead of it's sort of like artists, like Lilly was saying, is sort of brought on at the last minute, because there's so many times where you're like, well, we could have helped develop this into a much more impactful experience or program. And two, we need to pay artists and we need to figure out ways to do it. And like I said, I have solutions. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on my website, create2030.org. There's actually a link to a World Health Organization report on the role of arts in health and well-being. But, disclaimer, it was written taking information solely from Europe. So we don't have a lot of global work around arts and whatnot. But there's actually, I'm going to be doing a project with WHO on pivoting artists from entertainers to healers and training them in psychosocial skill sets to address two problems: the lack of employment for artists and the mounting mental health crisis. So if you're interested in that, there's going to be also some research elements that are part of that. I put my stuff in the chat message, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Helena and Ayanda, closing thoughts for you.
Okay, cool. I'll go. I think just to quickly tap into a question that you asked, I think it's very important that we as artists as well, if you want to be, straddling between both worlds, to be involved firstly, no one is going to pick you out and say, oh, that artist, he could have a message or she could have a message. Be involved, be vocal with your art and what you stand for and the social impact you're trying to address, firstly. And that means, go out there and find the network of the people that speak your language. You know, if we are, I mean, I could be here talking about gender-based violence or gender equality, but there's another artist who's an advocate, you know, for just strictly for children abuse, you know, or global warming, you know. Find that network, find those artists, and if there's a union that does, you know, accommodate such or fights for artists' rights, maybe start there, you know. And I think then you will start realizing that there is a voice and there's a place for you. I think also another thing is just be true to what you stand for. I think that's very important because, like Lisa and Lilly said, you know, a lot of the times you get that in these kind of events, they get the well-known artist or the most successful or who had the most trending song in the last decade to come perform. But then you realize that this person does not resonate with what this event is all about, you know, and that shows from someone who's trying to be impacted. The community that's trying to receive the impact can tell that this person is not for us, but is simply here for the paycheck. So it's very important that you as an artist are true to what resonates with you and ensure that the people that you reach out to don't have any blurred lines about the message you're trying to carry.
Thank you so much. Helena, last words?
Nothing special to say. I really agree with what the rest of panelists have been saying. Like involving artists at the end is not the way. We should always have a place at the table. We can come up with like innovative solutions together. I collaborate with people like multidisciplinary people all day long, and I think that's the way to go. Like that's the way to bring the innovation and the new ideas and the solutions to many of the wicked problems of the world if we work together.
Helena, Lisa, Lilly, Ayanda, thank you so much for all of our participants. Thank you so much for closing out the Women in Global Health Security Summit with this fantastic and inspiring breakout group. I'm hoping everybody has a lot of resources from the chat. Please stay in touch with us through social media and everyone's websites that they have shared here. Please support artists and creatives in the work that you're doing and the work that you're planning ahead. I'm going to invite Lisa to share her debut video from Create 2030 to help close us out with an inspirational song and video just to inspire the rest of our day and our week and the rest of the United Nations General Assembly. Thank you all. Mahalo nui kako. It's been a real honor and pleasure to be with you all in your homelands and wherever your work guides you today.
Thank you so much. And yes, I wanted to just share quickly, just to introduce this music video. It was produced by youth artists in Indonesia, Kenya, Tanzania, and the US, all during COVID. The song premiered with the UN on International Youth Day, and then the Youth Envoy's Office premiered it during the UN 75 Youth Plenary. We're going to be doing a lot with it. You're welcome again to get in touch with me. We have a lot of events coming up during the General Assembly and Climate Week, but I'm just going to quickly share it with you. It was a lot of fun. We had artists in time zones all the way from Los Angeles to Bali, and they completely produced it, wrote it, performed it. I cut the video, but other than that, they are remarkable, and I'm excited to share this with you. So thank you for your time and letting me share this. Great. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Okay.
We have learned the infrastructure of institutions. and tried to put our faith in his factory. But the fact is, all things are flawed. But forgiveness must be achieved to allow our imagination to redesign what it is we want to see, what it is we want to build. A new structure that reflects the heart of every human, removing what is exclusive, and we build what is inclusive. A reimagining of curriculum that colors from every spectrum makes the campus the kind of canvas I want to paint my genius into. As long as the transformation is genuine, the institution could become the guidance for a globe in need of a new collaboration.
I'm listening to your words, baby. I know you're trying. You out here 'cause all your friends saying we're exaggerating. We're overreacting big time. Not listening. Not listening to their words, baby.
Imagine a door never shook, a hand reaching out, a step across, footprints not lost. Imagine a space to be, living what you believe, embracing the colors of youth, coloring with the truth. Imagine a strength in devotion, promises never broken. Imagine these voices, not fighting for air, awakening the ear. Imagine this knowledge, not living and dying in books, coloring with the truth, and eyes not bowed, but shooting forward, and hearts beating in the rhythm of our feet as they march, breathing life to our dreams as they march, breathing life to our dreams so we can shine, for this is the time. Imagine for now, we breathe it, we live it, we live it now. We breathe it, we live it, we live it now. We breathe it, we live it, we live it now.
Our sleep, they take our voices, they take hunger, we misplace the slow, our pace, they sit on our place, don't guess the S, cause we are the best when blessed, we bless, system mistake, wasema no tunasema yes, kwa youth man wasema less, tunasema more, kwa youth man pamoja kwa moja to seek justice, to stand, justice ni just ways to adjust, who adjust kwa wenye task, kwa kuwe fast, mina wendo institution, bless this situation, bless this situation, bless this situation.
Wait for the moment, wait for the moment, imagine we're gonna own it. We're gonna own how we fantasize. Once we were broken, once we were torn a million times. Now that I'm stronger, I'm never stopping the way I imagine. Once we were broken, imagine. Now that I'm stronger, imagine. Once we were broken, there's a truth inside of things. Know that I'm listening.
Hierarchies, patriarchies, villainous ways we exist. The way we respond to our pain is often out of survival. I react before I respond. Then I trace the steps back to my original thought, which is this, that our voices are valid, our existences are true. There are thousands of fear and mirages of pain, and so much of it belongs to you. An institution has the potential to retract, to invest, to change the way we dwell. I am most interested in finding a secret place where we are all safe, where the intimate truth of the I is never threatened. If the world of power movers can switch their ears on, overturn the table, and let the newcomers build a new one, we can turn that I into a we. I know my power is within me.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks to them. They worked so hard. Yeah, thank you.
They did. I'm so inspired for all of the editing that you did to help bring that together, Lisa. We also, I'm excited to share, we also have another video submission that I'll bring up on my screen. It's called Gintara, and it's exploring the rich traditions of South Asia. Gintara is Pakistan's first vocal ensemble to fuse the music of the East with the rich harmonies of the West. Hailing from Islamabad, this 7-piece ensemble has already played sold-out shows and performed for major national TV channels. I want to share that this video will also be posted online at www.covid5050.org. And so let's see if I can bring it up here on mine.
Hello, my name is Iman Shahid and I'm from Gintara, a Pakistani vocal ensemble. Did you know? In Pakistan, 48% of women between the ages of 15 and 49 are categorically excluded from decisions made about their healthcare and well-being. Yet, even in these desolate times, there's still hope, as many are still actively fighting for equal rights. Congratulations to the Women in Global Health and the entire summit team for lending their voice to thousands of women and children across the globe. We'd like to dedicate this to you and to them. Here is our rendition of Hadika Keani's Intehai Shock.
हमको सिखाती है